Bitcoiners, pre-coiners, no coiners, new coiners, and of course, Swan Force members, welcome to Swan Lounge, a weekly show in which you get to hang out with the Swan team and some of our friends from the incredibly exciting world of Bitcoin. Now, before we dive in, as always, we are giving away Jan Pritzker's book, Inventing Bitcoin, for free in an effort to spread Bitcoin knowledge. You can go to swanbitcoin.com/free book to claim your copy. We have it in 3 different ebook formats, as well as MP3, read by our friend Guy Swan over at Bitcoin Audible. All we ask is that you pay it forward by sharing the book with at least 3 friends and family, preferably more. Inventing Bitcoin is the book I send to literally everyone who is new to Bitcoin and looking to get started. It's short, it's easy to understand, and you come away understanding not only how Bitcoin works, but also why Bitcoin is so important. We also have the book available en español y puede descargar su copia en www.swanbitcoin.com/libro gratis. Gets better every time. Even more exciting, we are also giving away Gigi's incredible book, 21 Lessons. If you haven't read it yet, it is a must read. Go to swanbitcoin.com/21 lessons. That's 21 lessons to get your copy. All these links are in the description below, so make sure to check them out. As always, are you signed up for Swan Force yet? If not, I'm disappointed. I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. Go out there, get your own referral link, share it with your friends and family. If they use your link, they'll get $10 of Bitcoin when they sign up, and you will get 25% of Swan's purchases for an entire year. In the theme of today's show, if you're not signed up for Swan yet, I would urge you to use swanbitcoin.com/HRF, and those fees will go to support the Human Rights Foundation. If you're new to the show, new to Swan, what is Swan? Well, we are quite simply what I think the easiest and best way to automatically accumulate Bitcoin with recurring buys. We also have instant buys. We've got some of the lowest fees in the industry for automatic dollar cost averaging, up to 80% lower than Coinbase, and our onboarding is incredibly fast. Even better, if you ever run into problems, which is unlikely, we have real people in customer service who are always more than willing and happy to talk to you. So go sign up, join the Swan family. We love our swans. We have a lot of fun over here, as you can tell if you're a regular viewer of the show. Even more exciting, we will be launching Swan Advisor Services this fall. The new platform will offer Bitcoin buying and custodial services for registered investment advisors. Probably not the most exciting thing for you or for myself, but if you know a registered investment advisor, please send them our way. Before I bring in our guests, one last thing. As always, hit the like button, hit subscribe. Doing so helps us grow the show. It helps us get seen on YouTube and helps us reach more people and educate them about Bitcoin. Now, today, we have a show that I'm very excited about. One of my favorite people in the Bitcoin space. We have got Alex Gladstein with us, the Chief Strategy Officer of the Human Rights Foundation. We were supposed to have Dredd. We don't have Dredd. He canceled the last minute, but we'll get him on the show again soon. We also have CoinsureNZ, who is, you may not know him, but CoinSure is one of Swan Bitcoin's shadowy super coders. So you'll get to know him. He was in attendance at the Oslo Freedom Forum, which is the theme of today's show. And of course, we have Swan's community manager and freedom fighter, Camila Campton. So let me kind of walk you through what this show is about. For today's show, I wanted to talk about this year's Oslo Freedom Forum and discuss some of the major takeaways from the conference. You know, Bitcoin it's far more than just magic internet money or number go up technology. Bitcoin is and will continue to be a major tool for promoting human rights around the world. And I know today is an exciting day for other reasons, with number going up the way it is. And it's okay to be excited about that. But Bitcoin is much, much more. So there's a lot to discuss. Let's dive in. I'll bring in our guests now. I'm unmuting them, which I always forget to do. Give me half a second, folks. And here we are. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for being here. How are you doing on this fine Friday afternoon?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Not too shabby, man. Not too shabby.
Thank you for joining us, CoinSure. I know you had some shadowy super coding to do, so I appreciate you being here. So the Oslo Freedom Forum this year, notably, I think, was the inaugural Bitcoin Academy. And just a bit of an overview that I stole right from the website. The programming focused on global Bitcoin adoption, the political history of Bitcoin, getting hands-on with the Lightning Network, learning how to receive donations and income in Bitcoin, learning how to spend your Bitcoin, learning how to sell Bitcoin for fiat currency, learning how to use Bitcoin privately, learning about leveling up your security with multi-sig, discussing who controls Bitcoin, why Bitcoin mining is important, as well as some lessons from El Zante about how to build a Bitcoin community. That's a lot. And if I'm being honest, the real reason for this show is because I wasn't able to attend and I had major FOMO. And I've got a show here and I can get guests on, so why not hear about it straight from the people who are there and running the show? But to kind of kick things off, Alex, I was hoping you could kind of tell everyone, what is Oslo Freedom Forum? Why does HRF put it on? And, what are the goals of the event each year?
Sure. So we launched the Oslo Freedom Forum back in 2009. It was actually launched at the same time as Bitcoin, which is kind of cool. So it was something that came together because the world had at the time a lot of like major conferences where like wealthy and influential people would come together, and those were based on a variety of topics. Like at the time there was like the Clinton Global Initiative on like human development. There was of course Davos for finance, economics. There was TED for ideas and technology, but there was not like a similar event for human freedom. It just like didn't exist at all. So our founder, who's a Venezuelan human rights activist named Thor Halvorsen, he said, why not create something for that same community where people could come together and discuss human freedom? So, I mean, that's really where it came from. It was supposed to be a one-off event in May of 2009 where some of the titans of the 20th century human rights movement, like Alexander Solzhenitsyn, Elie Wiesel, Václav Havel, and others could give like one last lecture to people pushing for freedom in this century. And after we did it, people were like, oh, you got to do it again. So we're like, okay. We did it in Norway for a variety of reasons. At the time, the political climate in the United States was still difficult following our invasion of Iraq, and like general disappointment with American foreign policy. Let's put it that way. And there, in European countries more generally, a lot of them have pretty nasty colonial histories, etc. So Norway was like Norway hasn't done that much negative to anyone else, relatively speaking. Already gives out the Peace Prize, is always highly ranked in terms of freedom and free press and things like that, compared to other countries. Is beautiful. We get added benefits. It doesn't get dark out at the end of May there, so you just conference all time, constantly for multiple days. The weather is very beautiful, and the people were very welcoming of this idea. So we started there, and we ran it for 10 years before I started to see the need to pull in some content around money and Bitcoin. We started doing that in 2017. We had our first ever meeting of the minds between Bitcoin users and human rights community, and like each year after that we just kept adding more and more. 2017, 18, 19, 20. Last year we had Jack Dorsey gave the keynote at our like virtual event, and then this year we had the opportunity to put together, like you described, like kind of a full-scale Bitcoin Academy, which was meant to be an extension of stuff that we had done not just at the forum, but also through other HRF workshops over the last few years. And I feel like it was the right time because of the UX. I mean, 2-3 years ago when we were trying to do this, like the UX just wasn't good enough for activists. Like it was hard to like onboard them easily. But with the apps that we have today, it's like incredible. Like it's so simple. I mean, we were during the Bitcoin Academy, we had a QR code on the static QR on the projector on the screen, and people were just like leaving Bitcoin off of it onto their Moon wallet. I mean, you couldn't do that a year ago, 2 years ago, 3. I mean, it just didn't exist. And just setting up a simple, easy to use, non-custodial wallet was harder back then, a few years ago. So we felt like the time was right. It was a great opportunity to get a lot of the leading Bitcoin educators and builders in one spot, to get them to reflect on how they could contribute. And then, also to educate the audience. There's 3 goals here with the Bitcoin Academy. One was basically helping, of course, first and foremost, getting the activists and dissidents to understand that this was a tool that they can use, and telling them, hey, we will help you. Number 2 is getting the Bitcoin educators and leaders to understand that they have just a tremendous opportunity to make a difference in the world through this. And number 3 is like the wider, the scene around us, right? So like the media and the other people who are like, huh, and like, you know, people who just drop in to the event and start listening, and then they would end up sticking there for several hours, right? So the feedback was really positive. Obviously, it can be aggressive to put like a bunch of Bitcoin programming in a non-Bitcoin conference. So we kind of tried to keep it a little separate. It was up on a roof, whereas the rest of the event was like down here. So you had to get in an elevator to consciously go up to it, which I felt was good. But at the end of the day, it was a great start, and we look forward to doing more at our next event, which will be in Norway in May. So I hope that helps.
That was fantastic. Thank you. It's super exciting to hear about it, and I actually want to touch on how the kind of the human rights community received Bitcoin a little bit later. But I asked in the chat, you know, does anyone have a question for any of the guests? And there's one question that's there that I looked at it and I laughed, but I think it's actually kind of a valid question. Alex, I'd love to kind of hear your your answer if you have one.
Sure.
But basically, it is. Where is it? How did this come to be a clown world?
How did this come to be a clown world? Dude, it's always been a clown world. I mean, we started the event because the largest human rights event was organized by the UN by dictators. I mean, literally.
Oh my gosh.
The UN Human Rights Council has the Chinese Communist Party on it, and Cuba on it, and Saudi Arabia on it. And we were like, this is a clown world. So let's actually create a human rights conference that's actually organized by freedom fighters and not like
Clowns.
horrible rogues gallery of horrible pirate dictators. Like, so the answer is it's always been one. And I know it feels like it's like more one now than a few years ago, but rest assured, I mean, nah, like if you, I mean, anyone who can remember, doesn't matter where you live, there's been crazy shit happening for the last 20 years. I mean, no matter if you're Russian, you remember the fact that Putin basically faked a whole bunch of bombings so that he could go to war with Chechnya. If you live in the United States, you know that like our government totally lied to the American people to invade Iraq. Like I guess I get it that things seem crazy today, but like they've always been pretty crazy. Like it's always been nuts. So this was born out of that. Hey, let's actually like and you know, let's put the troublemakers on the stage. I mean, I remember vividly one year in Norway we always have like a press conference with the speakers, and I remember my colleague was like giving this press conference to the world media. This was maybe 10 years ago, and he was like, I'd like to actually have everybody on this panel stand up if they are considered a terrorist by their government, and like half the panelists stood up. So it's like it really strikes home, right? Like it's all about context, but like the people that we want to support are considered criminals in their countries, right? And this later underlined how important it was to get Bitcoin involved in the educational part of the programming, because again, if your government considers you a criminal, they're definitely not going to allow you to have a bank account. So I mean, how are you going to keep your operations going? Through Bitcoin, right?
It's I think one of the the work that you and HRF is doing is always inspiring to me, but I think one of the really inspiring aspects is the fact that you can keep a straight face amongst all the clown world nonsense and continue to fight even though the cards are stacked against you.
And everybody's always accusing you of, I mean, like it's such a difficult field, right? So it's we as an organization have this like kind of mission, this guiding focus to help people who live under what we consider authoritarian countries, which are like all governments abuse human rights. It's just a matter of how they do it, right? So like it's really important to understand that like let's just put it in simple terms. It would be impossible or illegal for us to even hold an Oslo Freedom Forum in about 90 countries. Like we couldn't do it. So, our goal ultimately is to have if we can have an Oslo Freedom Forum in every country, like we'd be in good shape, but like you just can't in like literally dozens of countries around the world. And you can't even start a human rights group in these countries. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people miss, and they live in like a little bit of a bubble. So our goal at the Freedom Forum is to make a bubble breaking machine. We're just like breaking your bubble to help you understand what the wider world is like around you. I would say that was important for us over the last decade as we helped like digital rights activists connect to this event. Like a lot of digital rights activists are living in San Francisco. Their enemy is the NSA. That's totally awesome. Like I'm supporting them. but like they had very little opportunity to connect with others in other countries. Like, and so the Freedom Forum became this place where like digital rights activists could connect with like people working on Tor, people working on different encryption stuff, VPNs. They could come to our event and talk to people from like Bahrain or whatever, and like start to get their context. So that's what we're kind of modulating on with the Bitcoin stuff, like bringing in the Bitcoin community, like, and it's again double goal, like two things at the same time. Bitcoin community gets educated, learns how they can help. Dissidents get educated, they learn how they can have basically a stronger toolkit.
Do you think it's going to get to a point where we're going to have this conference here in America and then another one in Norway?
Well, yeah. So the reason why it was in Miami is because ironically, there were so many COVID restrictions in Norway, making travel prohibitive. Like when we had to commit to the dates, which was back in like April. Today, there are no COVID restrictions in Norway at all. So it looks good for May. So, you know, we're always going to have, you know, conditions permitting. I mean, one year it was like some volcano that like almost made our event impossible. It was, we've seen some crazy stuff.
I remember that.
That was in 2010. In 2014, a hotel strike. We had to cancel the event. Like literally the labor union of the country went on strike the day of our event, so we had to postpone. So we've seen some stuff, but hey, we have event insurance now, and like we're ready for anything. Like we did not have event insurance the first year when the volcano was like very close to canceling our event. We were like freaking out, but ever since we've had it. No, I think we're okay, and yeah, we're gonna try and do something in the US like in the fall every year. I don't know if it'll be as like much as this one, but we have we're always doing stuff. I mean, we have our event in Asia and Taiwan, which is a lot of fun. We've done events in Mexico City and Johannesburg and San Francisco, and we've done stuff for the Arab world as well. So we'll continue. We have a Taiwan event coming up in March. And then we'll try to do something in the US in the fall for sure. We'll be at South by Southwest this year. We had several of our panels are accepted, so we'll be there. We're probably going to have like a Bitcoin house during South by. Talk to the Unchained folks about this. Like we're going to have some cool stuff. So be in Austin second week of March. And then, yeah, we'll see you in Miami for the Bitcoin conference. And then we'll be out in Norway at the end of May, and we'll try to do something. I don't know whether it be in Miami or Austin or New York or whatever at the end of the year. But yeah, we'll keep trying to do stuff to bring together the community on this side of the Atlantic.
Love it. Well, my vote's for Norway because I've always wanted to go to Norway. But
oh, it's happening May 23 to 25. It's going down.
So CoinSure, you know, you were in attendance at the Freedom Forum. I'd love to kind of just pick your brain and hear about what it was like, just, you know, being there, and, you know, because you're a Bitcoiner. Maybe you could tell everyone a little bit about yourself first and kind of your history with Bitcoin, and then share what it was like to be there and maybe some major takeaways that, you know, you had from the conference itself.
Sure. Well, I mean, for me, I'd wanted to attend since I think I first saw her about it in 2018, 2019. I can't remember. At the time, I was living in New Zealand, so to get over to a lot of the conferences in the Northern Hemisphere was a bit of an ask, and by the time I found out about it, it was a bit too late. So I wanted to go for a couple of years, but hadn't been able to attend, and obviously last year, it was just kind of like a non-event. But so, I was very interested in attending. What got me interested in Bitcoin was, my professional background. If those of you that don't know, was, I was in the police for 10 years, and I've seen, I joined when I was quite young, and by the time I left, I'd kind of seen some of the negative side of how that works, and how, I guess to put it as bluntly as possible, but how the state can be a tool for oppression, and how the people that work inside the organization can kind of get in a very negative cultural space that has an influence on not just themselves, but the people they interact with in a day-to-day space. So it's been something that I've been quite interested in attending, and so finally I got to go this year. And I found it really, really interesting. I have to take my hat off to you, Alex, for, as I said, kind of being bold enough to, aggressive, I think you put it, to put Bitcoin in the forefront the way you did. I was saying to Stefan Levere when I was there, it felt a little bit like at times, like, when you got like a guy friend and a girlfriend, and you kind of get them in a room together and you say, hey, you guys should kind of hook up, you should get to know each other, right? There was a couple of moments where it felt a little bit like that, you know what I mean, where there was an obvious match, but it was like, there's a little bit of you could see this meeting of the minds, but it was just like, how do we, what do you like? And it was a little slightly awkward, if you know what I mean. But I think that's what you got to do, right? You've got to try to, just like the example I gave you, you've got to try and put the people in the room, and they obviously, and I definitely felt that took place at the conference, where people saw, there was a meeting of minds and a common shared goal, and really, like as you're saying, Brekkie, and I think you alluded to it a little as well, Alex. The financial aspect of this is one thing, and being able to enrich yourself and your family or whatever. But the real purpose of Bitcoin, as far as I see it, is this is a fundamental way to change the world in far more ways than simply the financial influence that it can have. As far as the ability to transact freely and to have more agency in the world around them through open source and other things. So to me, it was tremendous to see that the amount of kind of gelling of the two communities that came together here, and for me as well, just a real opener to see a bit more directly from some of the people that were attending in the human rights aspect of the conference, about where they were, and just interesting as well. Like I went to the workshop you had about what's it called? Gee, it escapes my mind right now. The spyware that's the top of mind at the moment. Fresh from memory? No.
Pegasus.
Pegasus, yeah, Pegasus. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah, just the amount of interest from people that weren't that technically savvy, and kind of where they saw these kind of issues and how they approached them. To me, was a real opener as well about you're trying to serve some of these people that aren't programmers or aren't that sharp about the technical element of Bitcoin. They're outsiders. How do they view these threats? What are they looking for? How are they approaching this technology? So, I found that really illustrative as well. So, yeah, it was just a great event. And again, I really have to take my hat off to you, Alex, for being bold enough to bring those two communities together. Because, I can see for some people, they might not see the immediate connection, but it really is there, and it's a very important one for both communities.
Yeah, and it's like, I appreciate that. And it's also like, look, we get a lot of questions about, why Bitcoin, why isn't this a crypto academy? And those are hard questions for people who have a very, they're like, oh, why wouldn't you be more open, So that's also been something we want to be really forward with, and just talk about how this is an open source currency available to everybody that nobody controls. And that's why we feel comfortable putting it at the center of our community. No one's like paying us to do this. This isn't like some in some marketing budget of some tech company. We do have tech companies that sponsor the conference for sure, and we're very happy to do that when a tech company has, when we feel like the tech company has a lot to learn from our community, or when we feel like the people in our community have a lot to gain from talking to leaders in that platform. Like, I'll just give an example. Like, Twitter has been a sponsor for a while, for like probably a half decade, and it's great because Twitter, for all of our complaints about Twitter, like, they come with teams, and they set up these like they set up these like workshops privately, and they'll talk to like 20 people from Latin America who use Twitter, and 20 people from the Arab world, and 20 people from East Asia, and they'll collect feedback, like, what are we doing wrong, whatever. And that's actually been really helpful, and our audience has been very happy to see that. So we'll see, but I think that over time it becomes clear that like the Bitcoin movement is part of the human rights movement. It's just, we're still very early on it, but we're really rounding a corner. I think people finally are starting to at least grasp that you can fund human rights activism with Bitcoin in difficult places, whereas you just can't with the financial system. That's becoming, I think, a little, at least that's clear to most people, if they're being open and honest with themselves.
This is definitely one of the areas I think that interests me most, is kind of, understanding how the human rights world views Bitcoin, or how that's changing over time. Like, I feel like as Bitcoiners, we always say like, Bitcoin fixes everything, and that's kind of a tongue-in-cheek sort of thing. But, there's truth to that. There's some truth in it, right? And so what I'm kind of curious about, Alex, is this year in particular, what was the reception from someone, I don't know, from people in the human rights community who stumbled up the stairs and came across the Bitcoin Academy? You know, like, did you open a lot more eyes this year than you have previously? And, you know, I don't know if you have any sort of anecdotes about someone who, you know, was maybe against Bitcoin and now is rethinking everything they thought they knew about it.
Well, yes. So I would just say that the human rights community still is like completely checked out on Bitcoin, generally speaking. So if you look at like the big human rights groups, they're not going to make it at the moment. They're just not. Like they're just they don't use the word Bitcoin. They don't, like, look at Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch. It's disappointing. They have exhaustive reports on countries, and they don't even talk about financial censorship and stuff like that. You know, at times, it feels like an issue that they're just ignoring for whatever reason. And then even the digital rights groups are like, it's you know, and I went through the same thing 5 years ago. Like, it's tempting to, like, when you start thinking about the digital side of things when it comes to money, you know, there will be all kinds of token producers that want to, like, get your attention, and they'll be like, here's a bunch of money, you know, and then they want you to use their token, right? And like, it feels like something that's very 2017, but like it's still out there in a huge way today, 100%. And it's just a little more quiet, but that's what ends up happening. I mean, whether it's with whatever, you name it, Filecoin or whatever, it's still like or any of these tokens. Like they find ways to, like, influence influencers. But at the end of the day, the influencers, if they're true, and I think this is really interesting, look at Snowden. I think the Snowden thing's really interesting. I mean, Snowden, I felt like was really missing it like 8 months ago. And he even made some crazy Twitter thread about, like, my opinions about it. Like at one point, it was really crazy. But I still hugely respect him. And dude, he's been, like, totally coming around lately, just pushing Bitcoin hard. So I think that people will get it eventually. And it's just a matter of time. And for whatever reason, like, the human rights activists not based in Europe and the United States are getting it faster than the activists based in Europe and the United States, to be quite simple. Like, they're very involved and at least, you know, open-minded. Like, like, again, when you tell them that there's money that the government doesn't control, they're, like, extremely interested. They're like, please tell me more. I would love to use this. I need this. Whereas you tell, like, a human rights activist who works in DC for some think tank about that, and they're like, I don't know. You know, I don't know about that. So it's all about perspective.
I feel like there's some parallels with what happened in El Salvador almost. Like, the government of El Salvador wouldn't have done what they did, and that's a whole other issue. But unless Bitcoin Beach, unless people, like regular people, had actually started using Bitcoin to better their lives. So it sounds to me like there are activist groups and groups that are doing good work out there that are starting to see the value of Bitcoin and are using Bitcoin, and maybe that will trickle up to the, you know, more Western organizations that, you know, are just out there kind of, I don't know, how do you put this, being activists versus people who are, like, boots on the ground. I don't know if there's something valid to that, but, like, someone who is trying to evade sanctions or someone who is trying to, you know, protect themselves will probably see the need for Bitcoin faster than someone who's advocating for those people. You know?
Yes, normally. El Salvador is interesting because the dissidents in that country have an anti-Bitcoin natural point of view, because the government that they hate is like promoting Bitcoin. So it's they're working through it, though, and I would ask the community to give them patience. It's going to take them time, as it took all of us time. And yeah, if you don't know what Bitcoin is, and all of a sudden you're like dictator in training starts using it, like, yes, you're going to be like, I'm not so sure about that. However, one of the journalists from El Faro, which is like the dissident newspaper in El Salvador, they came up to the forum, and this reporter was with us for 3 days, and I sat down with him for a long-ranging interview. I'm very excited about the story that he comes out with. I think it'll be a fair, honest look and a reminder to the Bitcoin community of what their perspective is. But it's funny because, like, normally when I talk to a journalist in a regime, in a difficult political environment, like, they're like trying to learn how to use Bitcoin because their bank account is frozen or something like that. But,
oh my gosh.
but you know, for them it's different. They're like, no, we're not. You know, it's just different. It's weird. But zooming out to, like, the world, because let's face it, 99.9% of Bitcoin users are not in El Salvador. In fact, we saw some crazy stats this week. I mean, who knows? But it looks like there's like potentially 100 million or 50 to 100 million Bitcoiners in India, like now it seems, which is insane. But as a reminder, there's only like 6.5 million Salvadorans, period. So like most Bitcoin use is happening not in Central America. Let's put it that way. But hey, zooming out, like the human rights movement is the folks who are open-minded, they're getting it. They're doing it quietly. They're not loud about it. Their colleagues give them a lot of grief about it. Like if you're like the first one to talk about Bitcoin in one of these human rights organizations, you're gonna get like a nasty little look from your colleagues.
The scarlet letter.
You're gonna get some side eye. Like this is not gonna be not here.
Can I ask?
What are you talking about?
How did you sway Thor Halverson? Do you remember what that conversation was like when you first had it?
I don't think I ever had to sway Thor. He's from Venezuela. And Thor's always been interested in this topic. But it's been great. I'm grateful to him because he's allowed me to produce this programming. Again, I've also been quite gradual about it. Like, it wasn't just like we went from nothing to the Bitcoin Academy. We've been slowly introducing this to our community over the last 5 years. So it's been like a gradual thing. And again, this was still like a side event happening on the route. It was not exactly like, right up in front of people.
All right, we'll do the main stage next year.
Well, I mean, I went up on the main stage with Elizabeth Stark and Fode Giap for like 4 minutes, just to be like, hey, quickly, here's why there's Bitcoin at this event. And yeah, I think you might see a little more of that, but generally speaking, it's gonna be there for people who want it. Bitcoin's a voluntary phenomenon, and we'll have it there as a. Look, I think the interest level is going to be through the roof next spring, based on price, basically just based on the price. That's literally the only thing that drives people interest in Bitcoin outside of our community is the price. And then all of a sudden you start getting the text messages from people. Oh, like, can you help? Can you help me, set up my thing? We're going to see a lot of that over the next 6 months. That's going to be great. It's going to be great. But
can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was going to chime in one little add-on to what you were saying there, Brekkie, as well as I think the people that I spoke to, who are from the more like human rights contingent there, I think they understand a lot better than the Bitcoin community does about the concept of the narrative war, right? Like there is two competing forms of propaganda almost in a lot of these situations that are finding each other out, right? And you've got to have your message really coherent and clear and sharp and really steelman all your arguments. And that's something I think Bitcoin has done very well with the economic things. But I think we have, especially seeing a little bit of the talk at the conference, we've still got a bit of way to go about some of the broader issues that were there. And I think some people did a really good job of it. But it's also, on us to try and be a little bit sharp with some of these people about, they see it and they hear all these things in the news and all this kind of stuff about scams and altcoins and all these other kind of things there. And it's really on us to be sharp with these people and get a more coherent, clear, crystalline message about, why is this important to you? Why should you be interested in this technology? It's not just about making money and Lambos and stuff. This is about freedom. This is about financial freedom. It's about freedom to communicate. This is freedom to be able to move, to not be controlled by another lever of the state or whatever organization that's oppressing you. So, that's something that I think I felt like I picked up from there about, some of these guys were very good at communicating very complicated issues and complicated situations in a very coherent and clear way to people that didn't understand all the context that they were in. And I think it's something that we've got to get a bit sharp on because, again, there's such an obvious match and there's so much use for both communities about intermeshing together. But just something that I think we've got to get a little bit clearer on to understanding where some of these people are and why it is such an obvious match for them and such a helpful tool.
100%. I just send around one of my favorite videos, which is why Bitcoin matters for human rights in 2 minutes. What's it called, Alex? Something like that.
Yeah,
that's a good one.
Well, we tried to play some of that content. What's up, Andrew?
Hey, Alex. Hey, Brekkie. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for joining us. Since you were late, actually you weren't late. You decided to come at the last minute, so thank you. But Everyone, this is Andrew. Works over at Casa. He's a great Bitcoiner. We were talking about a lot of things, but I'd love to hear what Oslo Freedom Forum was like for you, and any major takeaways you had.
By the way, Andrew also had a killer thread on this topic that you can probably source and show the people. But yeah, thanks for coming on, Andrew.
Yeah, dude,
Andrew, if you share that, we'll put it in the show notes. I'll try to find it now.
I'll DM it to you. But yeah, honestly, it was like such a surreal experience for me. And there's one thing, Alex, that stuck out to me about the conference, and it really had to do with like the importance of like how much this Bitcoin thing is like life or death for some of these people. And one of my favorite parts of the conference was just the side conversations I was having with like the human rights activists. And yeah, I don't know. I was just really affected by the whole thing. And it became very real to me. I think living in a first world country, it's like, it's not like the threat of being unbanked. That's not like a real thing. I don't feel like I'm actively being like persecuted or anything. Right. Or my rights being actively like taken away, at least to the extent that some of these other people are facing. And so it just made it like a very real experience for me. And then, yeah. And so part of the problem for me was like, it was so hard hearing some of these stories. Like I walked away with like, I don't know what to do with this. I don't know what to do with my emotions or like, and so I try to be very intentional about walking away with action items. And so I reached out to the few human rights activists that I was able to connect to. And so now I'm starting to work with like a couple of them on like some like side projects. Like one of them wants me to help with like education. Someone else wants me to help like figure out, teach like a small class on like security for like their students and stuff. And then, yeah, so it's just, I don't know. Overall, it was like a really profound experience for me. And yeah, I mean, I had that Twitter thread. I can go through it a little bit, but you can also share that, Brekkie.
Well, if you'd like to, sure. That'd be great.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, oh, wait, no, I didn't think you actually say yes.
I guess, oh yeah, okay. So the number one thing that, that I learned was that like, okay, so when it comes to like actually using Bitcoin, I think it's really easy for us to say like, oh, like, let me just send you Bitcoin and then like, like problem solve, but it's not always that easy. Like they need three things, I think, and they need internet access, they at least need a mobile phone, and they need liquidity. Like the liquidity is like the hardest part, right? And so when I was having some conversations with people, I wasn't sure, where would you source a liquidity? Because if Bitcoin is brand new to you in your country, like how are you going to offload it to actually leverage to fund your operations? And what I was surprised about was I was chatting with Farida, and she's an activist in Togo, and she was saying, you know what, there's something called mobile cash. And basically like I can swap my Bitcoin for mobile cash, which is basically like prepaid minutes. And it's everyone needs it. Everyone needs prepaid minutes. Right. And so you can offload the prepaid minutes. People will pay in cash for it. And so that was their way of like sourcing local liquidity. I was like, holy crap, like I never would have thought of that. But yeah, so that was like a really cool conversation I felt like I had there. Yeah, and then the second lesson was that like access to financial services is like a life or death issue. And so like you can't use centralized systems. You can't use anything that could be like, you need to use a censorship resistant platform. And Alex, I think you talked about this in a podcast once with in what Bitcoin did, but yeah, there's a reason why we can't use Ethereum, USDC, or Tether. And it's because, the governments couldn't like put pressure on these companies who are supporting and offering these, crypto tokens or stable coins, and they can censor the transactions. And like, you just can't have that as an option or a possibility if you're getting unbanked, it's not a replacement for Bitcoin.
Yeah. I mean, I think ultimately that's true. The crazy thing is, specifically, you see a lot of Tether in these countries, which I think is important for the Bitcoin community to recognize, because we need to get a solution, that can help Bitcoiners peg their non-KYC, non-custodial Bitcoin to dollars. I mean, otherwise people are just going to keep using Tether. And they use Tether in Palestine and in Lebanon and a lot of other countries to onboard into Bitcoin. It's basically how they do it, which is hilarious because most people who hate Bitcoin hate Tether even more. But ironically, Tether is the second most useful cryptocurrency in the world. Like for people when they actually need to like use crypto to do stuff, it's going to be Tether, which is so funny because it's like the hated currency, right? And I have no doubt that Tether will implode at some point soon, although it's really survived a lot longer than most people thought it would. But at some point, yeah, we're just going to have an option to for folks to like. I mean, look, you're seeing a lot more like strike kind of type stuff happen. They have this in Nigeria as well, essentially, like where and I think Ghana. So in Ghana and Nigeria, there's this app called Send Cash, where like any of us on this call could like right now, just with our Bitcoin wallet, send $20 or $100 through Send Cash, and it just deposits in Naira in someone's bank account like right away. And they use Bitcoin as a it's almost exactly like Strike. I mean, except it's created by a Nigerian team, and they have a relationship through the kind of stripe of Nigeria to the banking system, and they use Bitcoin as the payment rail, but you don't even really know about it. And I do think that whole like Bitcoin the asset versus Bitcoin the network thing is starting to really happen, because you're going to see a lot more like custodial services and apps like use Lightning as the rail, but like deliver value for people. And that's going to be a stopgap until we have like an option to just download a FOSS wallet and peg the value inside of it to a fiat currency. And look, I think that's coming with smart contracts after Taproot, like at some point. Could be years though. And in the meantime, it is important to know that people are using all kinds of technologies in these countries. But the most important thing is I think that we help them understand what Bitcoin is, how it works, how Lightning works, and how to opt into it as their own like bank, right? The whole be your own bank thing is so essential. And that's why we had a panel on it. And I was grateful for Andrew for participating. But that's really, I think, the mantra here for as we approach the human rights communities, be your own bank. Like,
Yeah.
And again, they like get that pretty quickly, that like it sucks not being your own bank. And if you live in an authoritarian country, like it's not a great experience.
They were like the easiest people to orange pill. It was
Exactly.
literally like,
Yeah.
I just said Bitcoin and they're like, how do I do it? Like, how do I use it? Like, it was great.
No, 100%.
But like the whole point about Lightning is kind of interesting because I was talking with like someone from Venezuela and was like, how do I raise funds? I was like, oh, just post a Bitcoin address. But he's like, if I post that, like people can find me. Like the government will know I'm trying to raise funds. And then I was like, okay, well, we can use Lightning instead. But I think one feature that Lightning is lacking right now that we need is like reusable LN invoices. Because now if we have that, we can post that on anywhere and it would be private, and and you can raise funds and it would be pseudonymous. And so I think that would be like a really, I don't know. I think we need to build something like that for Lightning to really make it more accessible, I think. Yeah.
I leave that up to you, Andrew, but yes, I agree. Camila, I know you had, we're getting towards the end of our time here, but Camila, I know you had a kind of an important topic you wanted to touch on. If you want to share.
Yeah. And actually Justin from the chat wanted to ask Alex this question. About how can plebs bridge this movement, or how can you become a freedom advocate once you get into space and kind of get over the whole number go up and it's like, yes, I actually want to help people. How can you start that?
It's a great question. Yeah, look, it's tough. I'll tell you why it's a little tougher than it seems. I get a tremendous amount of inbound. I always have, but especially in the last couple of years, from people who are like, here are all my qualifications. Like, how can I help you? And I mean, the short answer is like, if you don't want to make a donation, it is a little tricky for me to like figure out a way for you to help the Human Rights Foundation, because it requires management, it requires time, like requires us figuring out how to have a working relationship. I think a lot of people have like their heart in a good place and they're like, oh, how can you use me? And it's like, well, I mean, that's not super straightforward. Definitely donations is really the easiest way. The second easiest way that I will 100% be excited about is do what Andrew and CoinSure did and come to one of our events. And then like that way you can figure out how you can help, and you're going to meet people and you're going to leave that event with 5 to 10 new connections. And if you come to the Norway event, it's going to be 20 to 25 new connections because it's a 3-day event. You really get to really mesh with people. And in Norway, it doesn't get dark out at night. So you have 15 hours a day times 3 to spend with people. So it's really interesting. And it's not like Miami. There's nothing to do in Norway, in Oslo. Like you don't have like your friends like pinging you, come to this other party. There is no other party. Like it's just Oslo. And unless you're Norwegian, in which, yeah, you've got your family and stuff. But like if you're flying into Oslo for the Freedom Forum, you're flying into a bubble, and you're not gonna like be going out to some other club with somebody else. Like, so really gives you this opportunity, and you're gonna leave it with a lot of lifetime kind of connections, friends, relationships. So those are the 2 biggest things you can do to help. I mean, if there are specific things, I think translation is I found that to be very easy to work with. Like, if a lot of people come to me and they say, "Hey, you have this article, or you guys made this video. Can I translate it into this language?" The answer is always going to be 100% yes. Just please quote the original article. Sometimes, like for the Little Bitcoin book, we've had funding to help with that, and that's why the book's in almost 20 languages now, awesome. Including like Uyghur and Armenian and some smaller languages too. So I'd say translation works the third. I mean, we're always open to work with creatives, 100%. A fourth way that you can help that's really easy is if you are a web designer or a graphic person, go ahead and look at one of our websites and give us your this has been super helpful. Write up a 2-page report on how you would change our website to make it better. We always love that. So that's another way you can help. But in general, it's always tough for me to get the pleb emails where it's like, I'm a medical technician, or I'm a somebody, and it's like, I'm really happy you're reaching out, but I don't have something specific for you to do. Like, you can donate, you can come to one of our events. Maybe you can help with translation or giving feedback on one of our projects. So let's start with those things, and then we'll go from there.
Alex, one last question. Mm-hmm. When it comes to, supporting human rights and Bitcoin, honest answer, like, what do you think about running your own node and just stacking sats and contributing to the Bitcoin movement as a way to further human rights? Is that, maybe the results aren't tangible, but is that valid?
No, I think the results are extremely tangible. In general, human rights activism, look, it's been my whole career. I've been doing it since 2007. It's deeply meaningful work. However, there's signal and there's noise. And, and we've been involved in a lot of noise, 100%. And that's fine. But like, the reality is a lot of human rights activism is just virtue signaling. It's just like, oh, I'm putting a hashtag on Twitter. Mm-hmm. Great. Like, what is that actually doing for anybody? It's very rare that kind of virtue signaling actually achieves anything. I'm proud of the work we do because it's not just that. Like, there's other stuff we do that's super deeply meaningful. But I would say that using Bitcoin and helping people understand how to use Bitcoin, and to do that, you need to use it yourself and understand how to use it yourself. This little journey here is not virtue signaling. Like, if you can teach somebody in a difficult political environment how to use Bitcoin, like, that is a massive step forward for human freedom. So I would say keep doing it.
Awesome. I just wanted to thank Alex, thank Andrew, and CoinSure, and of course, Camila. I really enjoyed this conversation. I'd love to have more conversations like this down the road. And I also really love that we are having it on a pump day. To me, I think that's just
freedom
better
pump.
You're welcome, guys. You're welcome.
Yeah. By the way, the Bitcoin price went crazy during the Oslo Freedom Forum. That's directly the result of the freedom movement coming together to meet the Bitcoin spirit animal. Okay.
So again, thank you to everybody who was watching. I'm going to play one of Alex's videos to close us out, but to our guests, feel free to take off, and we will see you all next week for another show.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bitcoin has won over some of America's best-known billionaires, and institutions worldwide are treating it as a serious financial asset. But price is only one part of the story. Whether they know it or not, people who buy Bitcoin are strengthening a tool for protecting human rights. This still relatively new form of electronic money is censorship-resistant, seizure-resistant, borderless, permissionless, pseudonymous, programmable, and peer-to-peer. In Bitcoin, transactions don't go through banks or financial intermediaries. They travel directly from one person to another. Payment processing is done not by a regulated company like Visa or MasterCard, but by a decentralized global software network. Storage is handled not by a bank, but by the users themselves. Bitcoin issuance isn't determined by central bankers. The currency's creator, Satoshi Nakamoto, set it to have an ultimate limit of 21 million. No one can ever print more. Bitcoin transactions can't be stopped, and you don't need to reveal your name or address or telephone number to participate. You just need internet access. In 2017, the economist Paul Krugman described Bitcoin as some fancy technological thing that nobody really understands. There's been no demonstration yet that it actually is helpful in conducting economic transactions. There's no anchor for its value. Krugman lives in a sheltered environment in a liberal democracy with constitutional protections. His native currency is globally dominant and relatively stable. It's easy for him to open a bank account, to use a mobile app, to pay bills, or to grow his wealth by investing in real estate or stocks. But most people don't have the same privilege. 4.2 billion live under authoritarian regimes that use money as a tool for surveillance and state control. Their currency is often debased, and they are for the most part cut off from the international system that Krugman enjoys. For them, saving and transacting outside the government's purview isn't shady business. It's a way to preserve their freedoms. In China, if you type or utter one wrong word, the Communist Party might eliminate your financial services. This devastating outcome creates a chilling effect for dissidents and creative minds who are forced to use the country's increasingly centralized digital economy. In Hong Kong or Russia, donors to human rights organizations can get their bank accounts suspended and funds seized. Over the past few months in Belarus and Nigeria, nationwide protests have broken out against tyranny and corruption. In both places, activists raising money to support the democracy movement have had their bank accounts frozen. And as we saw in Burma just a few days ago, the military shut down the banking system during their latest coup and turned off the ATMs. For activists living under state repression, Bitcoin provides a way to preserve their money in cyberspace, locked away by encryption, safe from devaluation, in a network that has never been hacked. For them, it's digital cash and digital gold rolled into one. And in Cuba, Nigeria, China, Pakistan, Venezuela, Russia, Turkey, Argentina, Palestine, Zimbabwe, and elsewhere, Bitcoin is catching on and helping people escape tyranny and currency collapse. In the past few months, Belarusian activists have used Bitcoin to defy the regime by sending more than $3 million of unstoppable money directly to striking workers, who then convert it locally to rubles in peer-to-peer marketplaces to feed their families as they protest the country's dictatorship. In October, a feminist coalition in Nigeria raised the equivalent of tens of thousands of dollars in Bitcoin to buy gas masks and protest equipment as activist bank accounts were being turned on and off. In Russia, the politician and activist Alexei Navalny has raised millions in Bitcoin in opposition to Vladimir Putin, who has strict control over the traditional financial system. Putin can do a lot of things, but he can't freeze a Bitcoin account. In Iran and Palestine and Cuba, citizens are increasingly able to escape foreign restrictions on their financial rights, thanks to Bitcoin. In these places, individuals are dealing with sanctions or embargoes placed on them because of the misdeeds of their corrupt rulers. Bitcoin gives them a lifeline for earning income or receiving remittances from abroad. Some Venezuelans, having watched their country's currency evaporate due to hyperinflation, are converting their time and energy and family resources to Bitcoin's digital format and then escaping. With their savings secured by a password that can be stored on a flash drive, phone, or even memorized, they've started new lives in other countries, taking advantage of a technology that refugees throughout history could only dream about. The citizens of democracies also face financial controls, deplatforming, and an ever-expanding surveillance state. But those lucky enough to live in open societies can vote, sue, protest, and write, and those methods might allow them to protect their financial freedom and privacy. The billions who live under authoritarian governments don't have the same options. Unlike democracy, Bitcoin is universally available. You don't need to have a particular passport or bank card or voting status to use it. No government can turn off your Bitcoin if it's threatened by your ideas. We are in the middle of a great digital transformation, a time when cash, one of the last bastions of privacy and freedom, is disappearing. People are increasingly relying on easily surveilled apps like Apple Pay, Alipay, and perhaps soon, central bank digital currencies as their primary medium of exchange. Bitcoin provides an alternative to our increasingly centralized financial system. It gives any activist or journalist a way to raise funds without censorship, a way to save despite the corrosive impact of excessive money printing, and a way to teleport value without permission. Bitcoin wasn't as powerful 5 years ago, before it had global liquidity. But today, exchanges have popped up in every region. Daily trading volume exceeds that of popular stocks like Apple, and peer-to-peer marketplaces like Paxful and Local Bitcoins have extended their reach, enabling users to sell Bitcoin for local currency almost anywhere in the world. Maybe you don't need Bitcoin, and maybe you don't understand Bitcoin, and maybe PayPal, Venmo, or your bank account serve your needs just fine. But don't write off Bitcoin as simply a vehicle for financial speculation. For millions of people around the world, it's an escape hatch from tyranny, and nothing less than freedom money. Bitcoin has won over some.
Sorry about that. Thanks again, everybody. Hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy this crazy Bitcoin pump that's happening. We'll see what happens, and we will see you next time. Thanks for joining.